Oh.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. My life has value.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Global Watchman News. My name is Lori Swan. Hope you guys are all doing well. If you are over on YouTube in the live chat, we do ask to keep it family friendly. There will be moderators in there to make sure that we stay within the terms of service put forth to us by the platform we're utilizing tonight. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Take a minute, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell so you know when we go live. If you're watching us on our podcast over on, I forgot.
Apple and Spotify.
Apple Spotify. Thank you. Welcome. Please, subscribe to the channel, channels over there, and share with your friends on social media. We would greatly appreciate it. It is Wednesday night. That means that we have Big John and Hero in the house. We're going to welcome again my co-host with the most, Mr. Ernie B. Ware.
First, hi. What's going on, Lori? What's going on, chat? How's everybody doing tonight?
I'm good.
Blessings to everyone. I'm doing all right. I had some interesting revelations today and with my personal and professional life, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's the next steps in those will be, and hope everybody is doing well.
Maybe new doors opening?
I potentially see some new doors opening, and I see some advocacy, if you will, coming into the near future involving protecting the rights of certain people who are working. So hopefully that will spring into fruition soon.
Awesome. That's, keep us posted on that. Welcome back to the panel. We've got Big John in the house.
It's your old pal back again one more time.
Hi, Todd. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good. Good. I've been looking forward to this show since last week.
Yes, definitely.
And again, welcome to the panel, Hero. Hey, Hero.
What's going on?
How you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Awesome. You found us an interesting video that we're going to open up the show with, and hopefully, well, not hopefully, I know that it's going to open up the eyes to a lot of people. Again, if you are listening to us over on our podcast, I will I'll have Ernie put the links. Can you put the links in the podcast?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so what we're going to do is you can listen to it. I don't know how the visuals are on it, but interested in the video that I'm about to play right now, you can get the link. Ernie will put it in when he uploads that to our channels tomorrow. So without further ado, we're going to start with this video called Secrets of the Smithsonian. Stand by.
What if everything we know about humanity's history is false? There are numerous accounts of artifacts being confiscated by or sent to the Smithsonian, never to be seen again. Is the Smithsonian Institute covering up America's real history?
Hundreds of the reports, literally hundreds of the reports, ends by saying the bones have been taken away by the Smithsonian for further investigation, and they never get heard of again.
Of the millions of pieces the museum owns, only a small fraction are actually displayed. Forget what they want you to see. What is the Smithsonian hiding? Are ancient Egyptian artifacts removed from the Grand Canyon, hidden in a Smithsonian warehouse?
According to reports, the contents of the cave are sent to Washington, but they mysteriously vanish from the historical record.
From stories of giant skeletons to ancient Egyptian artifacts, what is the Smithsonian hiding? At the end of the Indiana Jones film, Raiders of the Lost Ark, the legendary Ark of the Covenant, which has been obtained at great cost, is seen being pushed into some government warehouse, never to be seen again. But could such a secret warehouse filled with hidden treasures and artifacts really exist? Many researchers insist it does, and believe the Smithsonian Institute is deliberately hiding clues about humanity's true history. It's been called the nation's attic. The Smithsonian Institute warehouses some 150 million items collected over 200 years. Its 19 museums receive nearly 30 million visitors a year. At the time of the Smithsonian's founding, most of the continent had not been archaeologically explored. The powers that be knew that in order to maintain their version of history, they would need a repository for all the artifacts that do not fit their narrative. Could the true purpose of the Smithsonian be to cover up America's real history and replace it with the version the elite want us to believe? Many researchers believe so and point to numerous newspaper articles claiming incredible finds were taken by the Smithsonian, never to be seen again. Stuff like Egyptian artifacts and giant bones. One such article appeared in the Phoenix Gazette back in 1909. That still sparks fascination and curiosity to this day. It told of two explorers from the Smithsonian who stumbled on a mysterious cave in the Grand Canyon, a discovery that would be the link between an ancient world and ours. Inside the cave, according to the article, they found a dugout maze of geometrically perfect tunnels filled with ancient Egyptian artifacts, including mummies. But how could such an incredible discovery go unnoticed for so long? And why haven't more people heard of it? That's because the two explorers who found it were working for the Smithsonian, and the whole thing was swiftly covered up. The fantastic artifacts and mummies presumably removed.
According to the Gazette, the Smithsonian Institution sent out an archaeologist whose name was Jordan. And Jordan and Kincaid then began exploring these caves.
There are stories and rumors that an expedition was mounted after the discovery. And in one version, 109 truckloads of artifacts were actually removed, and with very great difficulty, from the cavern system.
According to reports, the contents of the cave are sent to Washington, but they mysteriously vanished from the historical record.
It was a front page newspaper story in the 1909 Phoenix Gazette. What they reported was that the Smithsonian Institution was doing excavations in the Grand Canyon that was being supervised by an archaeologist named Jordan. It all had to do with another explorer named Kincaid, who had been traveling down the Grand Canyon. And what he claimed he discovered was these caverns. Inside these caverns were, he thought, and the Smithsonian then later confirmed, according to the newspaper report, that there were Egyptian artifacts, there were Hindu, Buddhist artifacts from India. They were saying that, there were mummies in there, and that apparently they had a special vault in the Grand Canyon where they buried some of the leaders, people they had left behind with artifacts and things like that, and that the Smithsonian Institution got involved. They were hauling all this stuff out of these caves, including these mummies, swords, shields, statues. The Jordan, the archaeologist, who was going back to Washington, D.C., back to the Smithsonian. And, this is these exciting new discoveries in the Grand Canyon.
Today, the Smithsonian will deny any knowledge of these discoveries, and the area where the cave is supposedly located is now off limits. Investigators are further convinced by the numerous Egyptian names given to areas and geological features of the Grand Canyon. Names such as Isis Temple, Tower of Set, Tower of Ra. But what became of the ancient mummies and Egyptian artifacts that were supposedly taken by the Smithsonian? Could they be stored in some secret warehouse? Many researchers, such as David Hatcher Childress, believe it's a possibility.
And it's really a lot like the first Indiana Jones movie, where Indiana Jones has discovered the lost Ark of the Covenant, and then right at the end of the movie, he says, well, where's the Ark? And they tell him, oh, well, don't worry, top men are working on it.
Where is the Ark? The Ark is somewhere very safe. From whom? The Ark is a source of unspeakable power, and it has to be researched.
And it will be, I assure you, Dr. Brody. Dr. Jones, we have top men working on it right now. Who? Top men.
And then the last scene in the movie is this giant warehouse, apparently at the Smithsonian, and the Ark of the Covenant is in this crate, and it's being put in this giant warehouse, and no one's ever going to see it again.
But if such a clandestine facility does exist, what other hidden items from our history might be stored there? That's where the story gets even more intriguing. There are numerous accounts of giant skeletons being found across America, only to be taken away by the Smithsonian. In 1912, archaeological excavations of ancient mounds near Lake Delavan in Wisconsin had found skeletons of extraordinary dimensions, some of them nearly 10 feet tall. On May 4th, the New York Times picked up the story. The article tells of 18 skeletons of a quote-unquote hitherto unknown race and adds that the skulls of the skeletons were unusually large. And that was only one of over a dozen similar stories reported in newspapers in the late 19th, early 20th century.
So in the articles of the giants that were found in the late 1800s into the early 1900s, yeah, they found a lot of bones. There's some photographs in the book that show that they did find something that was phenomenal in size. And I'm not talking one or two cases. There's dozens of them. And they're scattered across the U.S. And many times they're related to what's called today Indian mounds. Either in or near the mound, they found these giant skeletons.
Giant skeletal remains have been found in Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois, Ohio, Kentucky, New York, and other places around the world, many of which found their way to the Smithsonian, where they were never seen again.
Long been fascinated by legends of American giants, is David Hatcher Childress.
A number of mounds in the Midwest in America were excavated starting around 1850. And in many cases, they would find skeletons of people who were in excess of 7 feet tall.
The one that was found in Bridal Veil Falls, California by a group of miners, first they found this wall with very intricate hieroglyphics. They assumed that they were finding gold behind the wall. They broke it down and they found this woman holding a child covered with fur and a strange kind of dust. The same tall female mummified remains have been found in Texas. They have been found in Death Valley. They have been found in other parts of California.
These old photographs and newspaper clippings are all that survive of these mysterious giants.
So this is the first level of kind of cover-up conspiracy when the Smithsonian got involved. And they got so involved, it got to a point where they were, as soon as there was any report, they employed about 200 people to go out to mound sites, to go out and find any reports and to get all the skeletons, to disappear them as quickly as possible. Some years ago, when the Colonel Ben Smith mound was opened by Professor Norris of the Smithsonian, he found the skeleton of a giant which measures 7 feet 8 inches in length. Also, a stone axe was discovered, which was huge. Again, we have the Smithsonian involved here. This is the time when they were starting really in full flow of going to all the different sites to make sure they recovered the bones. More examples here, 7-foot-tall skeletons. Again, the Smithsonian getting involved. Again here, this is quite an interesting one actually, a 10-foot skeleton skull. But what's weird about this one, it's talking about technology. As corroborative proof, the members now was exhibiting the rusty and time-worn barrel of what appears to be an ancient gun, weighing between 25 and 30 pounds, resembling a flintlock rifle. This, they said, was picked up beside the skeleton. These bones will be taken out of the cave at the earliest possible date and carefully packed and forwarded to the Smithsonian Institution. Yay! We've got like probably 130, maybe 150 reports that end with the Smithsonian. No, maybe, I think it might be 250, in fact.
Archaeology at that time was in a heyday. There was everybody that had a shovel was out trying to find something. But what's interesting is that the finding of these giant mummified bodies and giant fossils and bones, really, you can't pin to any particular location. They were finding them in Greece, they were finding them in Italy, they were finding them in the Middle East, they were finding them in America. And even if you write off a few of those as perhaps a hoax or a misinterpretation of something else, you're still left with a tremendous amount of evidence to show that there were these giant beings at some point walking the earth.
I grew up in Anderson, Indiana, and I knew that we always had Mound State Park that I was, visited myself as a kid and everything. But nobody ever said that there were any giant skeletons found there. And in this article, it talked about the Smithsonian being interested in making that area a national park because of the finds. And what they found was they broke into an area near the mound that inside were 6 giant skeletons that were in a sitting position. And when they broke into this, the fresh air got in and most of the skeletons just disintegrated into pieces except for at least 2 of the skulls. There was this 1883 newspaper article about how one of the historians in Anderson had one of the skulls and that another one was on display, which back in those days, as these skeletons were being found mostly in the late 1800s, they would be displayed in the museums all over the country. And then they just started disappearing because the Smithsonian would come in and take the bones, telling them that they wanted to investigate them, and they would never be returned. I even read an article that suggested that they had so many of these that they could no longer store them at the Smithsonian, and they would take them on barges out to the Atlantic Ocean and just dump them. The Smithsonian does not seem to want to come forward to answer any questions about this. There was one man during the period of time that most of these skeletons were being discovered, and that's because we were pioneers and we were building houses, and they were buried so shallow, 3 feet. You would find the bones at 3 feet only. And there was one man that was making the decision on what was being done with these bones. And most of them were just gathered up. You know, they would come out and pack them away, put them on a train, and send them back east. And then from there, most of them disappeared.
What happened to these skeletal remains? Were they stored away somewhere?
The last I'd heard was that some of these things were kept in like a forensic vault at the university. And then I ran into an anthropology student at Dunkin' Donuts and got into a conversation with her. And she said that within a year or maybe 2 years ago, they had sent all of these things off to the Smithsonian, at which time I just groaned because I've done reviews on 2 books. I can't come up with the titles right now, but they're both about the tremendous evidence that giant skeletons have been found all over the country, going back to the, I think, 1800s. And these were so often shipped off to the Smithsonian and never seen again, never heard of again.
Accounts of giants can be found in almost all ancient mythologies. Could giants have really once lived among man?
Under these described conditions, plants and animals would live longer, be much larger, and that's precisely what we find in the geologic column, in the fossil record. Plants were much larger. All living systems were larger. We have animals that today have an 8 or 9 foot stature with a 16 to 20 foot stature. We have insects such as the dragonfly. Today, the dragonfly has perhaps a 4-inch wingspan. In the fossil record, his counterpart, Meganeuropsis, had up to a 5-foot wingspan. Everything was larger in the past.
There is evidence in the press of huge skeleton findings throughout America, but the Smithsonian claims no knowledge of them or any other oversized skeletons.
When you delve into this world, you start to figure out, well, how can the Smithsonian say that they don't have it? Because 4 papers said that they came and took them. Now, is their bookkeeping that bad that they can't find these things?
Of course not. They know exactly where these things are.
But if the Smithsonian does maintain a secret warehouse where incredible discoveries are hidden, the next question we must ask is, why? What purpose might they have for keeping such discoveries secret?
Why keep it a secret, David? If the Smithsonian confiscated all these artifacts, mummies and tablets and things like that, why keep it a secret?
Well, there's a number of reasons for that. But part of it is, and it's the same reason why a lot of things today would be kept a secret. They're engineering history, and today history is politically correct. It's not necessarily what really happened in the past.
Now, why keep it a secret?
That's the part that I don't know. I suppose it would change the course of our history. And I mean, if it showed that they were from the Egyptian area, let's say, of the world, common question would be, well, how did they get here? Maybe those questions don't want to be asked.
So I think, too, though, that if it echoes the Bible, they don't want people to know that.
Coupled with the tools and the metals that were found with them, I think it shows, it's a conundrum that maybe the powers to be don't want to answer.
Many of these finds, if authentic, would call much of established history into question. Not only the history of North America, but humanity itself. Such revelations could be very problematic for the powers that be, whose interest is in maintaining the status quo.
It appears at this point that the Smithsonian chooses to add, they want to keep history as we have been taught. They don't want things to change. And so things that are like an anomaly that don't fit in with their idea of history, those things get buried.
There is a very true quote by Orwell. He who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. In other words, if the powers that be control what we think of as our past, then they get to establish the framework through which we view the present. But to discover the Smithsonian's real purpose for hiding various artifacts, perhaps it's best to follow the money. Today, the Smithsonian operates an interconnected network of museums and research centers, receiving some 30 million visitors per year. all free of charge. But while the Smithsonian is funded by our tax dollars, much of its funding comes from private donations, most of which come from tax-free charitable organizations, such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. These foundations exist to perpetuate the work of their elite founders and further the cabal's agenda. Perhaps the best quote on the subject comes from Vine Deloria, a Native American author and professor of law, who stated, "It's probably better that so few of the ruins and remains were tied in with the Smithsonian, because they give good reason to believe the ending of the Indiana Jones movie, a great warehouse where the real secrets of Earth's history are buried." Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe.
All right. I wanted to play that to open this show up because this is what we're going to be talking to you guys tonight about, is the secrets of the Smithsonian Institute. John, I'm going to let you, what was your thoughts on that video?
Yeah, they covered all the good basics of it about the Kincaid and that Jordan guy, and then of course John Wesley Powell, who led all the. See, John Wesley Powell was definitely an arm of the Vatican too, and he led the against the indigenous tribes. He also led the isolationism and Darwinism agendas against them, because they obviously had all the knowledge of the Grand Canyon finds. And that's what kind of started the whole, the Union Army against all the indigenous tribes, the cavalry, basically. It was really the Smithsonian waging that war, not any kind of manifest destiny.
So basically, anything having to do with anything, if the Smithsonian Institute shows up to try to take, you find something in your backyard, you think it's valuable, it looks old, it looks like it may have some historical significance, last person you want to call is the Smithsonian Institute, right?
Yeah, definitely, because when they were finding these things all in the the fields of Italy, then Sardinia and Malta, the Vatican was like coming in, because they literally, these people were saying that they would dig it up and the church would pay them, and they would leave them, on these tables, and then by the next morning they'd be gone. The church would come collect every piece, because they're plowing their fields, in the early 1900s, and they're like, these giant femurs and all parts of skeletons are literally right at the surface. Just like they mentioned, they couldn't bury them that deep. They didn't have any kind of excavation equipment to get them that deep. So 3 or 4 foot, they're bringing up all these different bones. So the Smithsonian had that under control here in the Americas, and then the Vatican had it in Europe.
All right, guys, I'm having computer problems. Ernie, if we can just take a second. Ernie, I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna shut down my computer and try to turn it back on. But I'm gonna send you all the links that I have opened up here to present tonight over to your Facebook, if you could pull them up, and I will be right back. I apologize.
All right, take your time, Lori. I'll take over. So yeah, I've learned a lot about the Smithsonian in the past week. I really didn't know too much about it, and one thing that you did mention that is one of the things that I've learned is its connection with the Vatican. And we all know with the Vatican that it has its influence on worldly affairs, whether it's political or religious. A lot of our current world religions stem from there. And now the Vatican has been known by certain circles to house certain types of artifacts and books that is relevant to our understanding of history, but it's also holding some of the secrets to mankind that I firmly believe that we must know. John, can you go in a little bit about that, and as well as some of the things that the Smithsonian and the Vatican has colluded into holding or withholding from us as a society?
For sure, I know that the Vatican is built on top of Nod, which was the city in the scripture of Genesis, to where Cain's wife was from.
Mm-hmm.
So they had the basic knowledge of that there was other civilizations other than the creation. And now go to the Spanish Inquisitions, which were before any thought about America. So when Pizarro and Cortez, the chroniclers that arrived with them, with the conquistadors, they were Catholic priests. So the Vatican got a huge kickstart arriving in the Western Hemisphere. And then, and Pizarro talking about, the giants, skeletons being drug out by these people, by the Incans. And Pizarro said that he carried a 6-foot broadsword, and he said that they took the sword and he put it in the eye socket of one of the skulls, and only a cubit remained, which is like 18 inches. So that tells you that, that the skull is pretty good size, and they were worshiping them. So, and then these priests are basically like, okay, so everything that we've learned on the soil of Europe is true about these giants, because like Sardinia and Malta, Knights Templar, any kind of Crusades, Dark Ages, or whatever, these people were finding all these things on these islands, all these evidence of giants, especially on Sardinia, because the giants on that island were called the Nuraghi, and they built the Nuraghi towers. There was like 30,000 of these 50, 60-foot tall towers on the island of Sardinia at one time. And these people were like, well, it's just like, museum pieces of these people. And they talk about they're related to these giants. So that's the Vatican's pretty much kickstart. And then the Cosmos Club, which was created from the Vatican, that's what runs the Smithsonian. That is the most secret of societies. You could say Freemasonry or whatever, but no, the Cosmos Club, those cats are deep, dark, secret. And so they established the Smithsonian, and basically, because they learned from the like South America and Latin America that North America was in fact the land of the plumed serpent. And then when Kincaid had this huge expedition into the Grand Canyon, and they know that the Egyptians are the original Anunnaki, they pounced on it. So they had all that information. They knew exactly, once they got wind of that, they didn't go in there and research and catalog. They went in there and said, get this out of here. This is exactly what we don't want the world to find, because it proves out of, straight, no kind of details. It's like giants are real. There it is. And then that would in turn prove the scripture.
Can you elaborate on the Egyptians being the original, or like the original Anunnaki, or like, do you mean like the Egyptian gods, like the half human, half?
The Egyptians. Okay, so the Egyptian culture, the Vatican already knew that the Egyptian culture was found everywhere.
Mm.
Every culture they arrived at, which they're finding today, that's like we got that buddy of ours, alien Carvin's guy. He has that stuff coming from Mexico being dug up, and there's Egyptian gods along with on these Toltec artifacts. And these Egyptian, like Anubis and then the sons of Horus, the different chimeric sons, they are on these artifacts along with Aztec, Toltec, Mayan people. Also included on these artifacts are the basic Anunnaki, which are the elongated skull, wings, and a snake's tail. Those are the original Egyptians because they have the headdress.
And speaking of which, there has been interesting finds in the US. I know we've discussed it when you first started joining us, John, about America's ancient Egypt. For those who haven't saw that video, I would recommend to go back. I would say about a year, one of John's very first shows with us, and we talked about all the things that America has that completely relates to ancient Egypt. And the Smithsonian is housing a bunch of that. In fact, in the Grand Canyon, for instance, some remarkable discoveries have been found. John, you want to go in a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the Grand Canyon, Kincaid came across the structure of a citadel. Now, when I talk about citadels, you know, I'm referring to the original like buildings with columns, you know, basically pantheons, you know, Roman structure, because it's all the same. Roman and Greek and Egyptian, all the columns, it's all the same. It's all, those things have always existed, and pyramids and stuff like that. So anyhow, there's a citadel inside the Grand Canyon. And what built that was, my opinion is that was already there, but factually, Alexander Helios, the son of Mark Antony II and Cleopatra, he arrived on the California coast with about 50,000 Egyptians, 436 years before Christ was born. And they ended up settling in the Grand Canyon. Now, I think they ended up going to a place they already knew about from their history, not ours. And I think that citadel was there for a long time because of the actual, because if you want to say the Egyptians like Alexander Helios, those people assimilated into a culture that already existed. They are not real Egyptians. They just showed up and Heliopolis was there and they just took it over. Heliopolis and the Giza Plateau, those things were there well before Adam. So they just assimilated there, took over the culture, possibly found some DNA, maybe even messed with chimeric things, because and Anakhten and Tut all had like different DNA. So I mean, there was all kind of stuff going on. Anyhow, they arrived in Grand Canyon, and that was discovered. And then the Colorado River literally goes down into Texas, and can even, you know, you even have pyramids in Tennessee. So they just kind of came across the entire continent, or that, you know, the actual land of what we know as America, and settled in Texas, Tennessee, you know, basically everywhere. But yeah, so there's an underground citadel that literally housed about 50,000 people underneath the ground in the Grand Canyon.
It's interesting that the names that they chose for the art, what do I say, the architecture, the ancient architecture. If you Google it now, they'll totally deny it. They'll say nothing was ever found, no Egyptian artifacts were ever found in the Grand Canyon. Yet you can go there and you can actually see, if you can sneak into some of these places, because us, you know, public folk aren't allowed in a lot of those places in the Grand Canyon. But you've got the Tower of Set, the Tower of Ra, Horus Temple, or Osiris Temple, Isis Temple, Cheops Pyramid, Buddha Cloister, Buddha Temple, Manu Temple, Shiva Temple. Come on.
Yeah, because see, the Smithsonian, they could get there, and they even say that a lot of those foundations are there still lined up with the constellations. That's why people love Sedona so much. Yes. Because there were also foundations of pyramids there at one time. But the Smithsonian, they could carry out the demolitions. Now, that's why they created the Tennessee Valley River Authority and flooded built all those dams so they could flood out and sink the Tennessee pyramids, because they couldn't blow those up. So it depends on where the pyramids are at, to where they figured out what they could do to hide them or whatever. But they could actually explode them in Arizona. They could demolish them.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, because there's a lot of open space in Arizona. And
definitely.
What's interesting is the history of Arizona. There's actual what do I say, civilizations that have completely disappeared without a trace. The Hohokam Indians are one, and there's another one up towards north of Sedona before you get to the Grand Canyon. And you have all of their buildings, all of their ruins, and nobody can just, talk about it. Nobody says anything. But when you look at their hieroglyphs, you see the same hieroglyphs there that you do in the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like I was saying before, and Hero asked about the Anunnaki being Egyptians. The Anunnaki, which are fallen angels, that's Lucifer basically. They were all involved with every culture, because every culture tells the same story: portals, giants, reptilian deceivers, the ant people. Reptilians, if you want to say that. They all tell the same story about these things. And guess we're close to, like the Anasazi, they didn't deal with none of that stuff until they talk about a reptilian coming through a Stargate, telling them how to do, pharmakia and building these kivas and doing this human sacrifice and all these different things. And then, of course, the Anasazi were eating on the run, and that's been proven by the University of Colorado. So, I mean, and then remember we talked about the Paiute Indians and how they fought the Lovelock, red-haired giants. But the Smithsonian is just that whole area. And I think something's on Skinwalker Ranch. I think there's another citadel underneath that ranch that has some kind of damn monolith or something powering that thing. But the power structure, funny is that something is powering that citadel in the Grand Canyon, and it's always been powered because of the ley lines.
Right. You've got some interesting stuff that you sent me. You want to start with those?
Definitely.
Okay. Here's a newspaper article, and we were showing a newspaper article also in the video that we opened the show up with. And this is explorations in the Grand Canyon. I can't really make this any bigger, so let me go to
now this is a PDF that was locked that I've had. I can't send it. That's why I took screenshots of the PDF. Yes. But this information and names some names. It's not many people have this. So if y'all can read it, that's.
Well, this is the one from April 5th, 1909. And it talks about mysteries of immense rich cavern being brought to light. Jordan is enthused. Remarkable finds indicate ancient people migrated from Orient. It says down at the bottom, he found what looked like Egyptian hieroglyphics in the cave, but also hallways and rooms that were carved out of the cave walls. The age of the honed out rock is estimated to be 3,000 years old. He also found a crypt full of mummies and various artifacts of what appeared to be Egyptian in origin. In the article, it's mentioned that he worked for the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. for 30 years. After he collected a few of the artifact samples, made notes, and took pictures, he sent all back to D.C., presumably to the Smithsonian. According to the report, the Institute sent 30 to 40 archaeologists to help investigate the find further, including Professor S.A. Jordan, who would supervise the expedition. What's this?
Yep.
That's what it looks like underneath there.
Wow.
So this is a picture that depicts what the Smithsonian looks like underneath.
Well, no, that's the Grand Canyon Citadel.
This is the Grand Canyon Citadel.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is for our podcast listeners, so they didn't know what we're looking at.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we're showing a picture of what it looks like underneath the Grand Canyon with the citadel that powers it. And this is what it says. It says, when these individuals conducted further investigation of the cave, they found several passageways and multiple rooms, with some as large as 30 to 40 feet. They also found a large stone idol. The construction of the passage was very organized, like that of spokes of a wagon wheel. There were storerooms of seeds and what appeared to be a dining room that was 700 feet long. There was also one particular room that they did not enter because it was very dark and had an odd smell. The whole place was a treasure chest of artifacts, and the team found copper instruments, weapons, gold chalices, pottery, hieroglyphics, and more. The cave would become known as Kincaid's Cave, but the story only gets interesting from here. When it talks about the wheel, the spokes of the wagon wheel, look at the symbolism of the Smithsonian itself.
Yeah.
Kind of,
Yep.
you know.
Oh yeah, I mean it's like the Smithsonian, once they found that, they had already been expecting it.
Right.
They're just like, we found it, kind of almost like Indiana Jones, like, we heard the stories, where is it at? Oh, Kincaid found it.
Oops, not that one. What's this one? This is the next one. So here's the next one. This one is looks like, well, it says, since the time of the publishing of the report in the Gazette, several people have approached the Smithsonian to ask about the artifacts, as well as Kincaid and Jordan. The Institute has flatly denied that these men ever worked for them, as well as saying that there are no Egyptian artifacts or hieroglyphics in the Americas. However, although they have been able to scrub Kincaid from their records, there was a mention of S.A. Jordan found. If the evidence of an Egyptian presence in the Grand Canyon ended here, then one could probably chalk it up to a newspaper spinning a sensational story in order to sell papers. However, Kincaid was not the only one to have found an Egyptian connection in the Grand Canyon. And we'll go to this one. Go. Powell's Cave. Jump in anytime, John.
Yeah, Deb, no, go ahead.
Okay. Powell's Cave. Powell's Cave is named after John Wesley Powell. Powell was a well-connected general for the Civil War, where he lost an arm. He was also the person who led the first government-funded passage through the Grand Canyon in 1869. The passage would become known as Powell Geographic Expedition. Significant to his report, Powell would become the first director of the Smithsonian's Bureau of Ethnology. As all his background information on Powell is important and will be revisited later in this report. However, with regard to Powell's Cave, this background is significant because it attests to his gravatas. After his 1969 expedition, Powell published a journal of sorts on his findings. In it, he wrote the following. In this canyon, great numbers of man-made caves are hollowed out. I first walked down a gorge and to the left of a cliff and climbed to a bench of the cliff. There was a trail on the cliff bench that was so deeply worn into the rock formation. Where the trail crossed some gulches, some steps had been cut. I could see no evidence that the trail had been traveled in a long time. I returned to our camp at about 3 p.m., and the men had found more Egyptian hieroglyphics on cliff walls near the cave. We explored the cave and found the shrine and other artifacts. That evening, I sent a team member to notify the Smithsonian Institute of our discovery. We continued to survey the canyon and discovered more Egyptian tunnels and cities. I estimate in my report that I think upwards of 50,000 Egyptians had inhabited the Grand Canyon at one time. Upon his affiliation with the Smithsonian, Powell's attitude would change significantly regarding the Egyptian presence in the Americas. But his own written words tell us that he believed that there was an ancient Egyptian civilization, 50,000 strong, that had once occupied the caves of the Grand Canyon. Why the secrecy? For those who think such a civilization is impossible, all one needs to do is look at landmarks at the Grand Canyon itself. There are adorned with Egyptian names, again, like Isis Temple, Cheops Pyramid, Tower of Set, Tower of Ra, Horus's Temple, and Osiris Temple. And the funny thing is, no one knows where these names came from, but they have been that way since the Grand Canyon became a national park in 1919. And when you connect these landmarks on a map, you have what appears to be the diagram of the constellation of Osiris. And
It should have that picture next.
I know, and it's not here. Give me a second. I have it. I just have to.
It shows all the connections, right? All the lines.
Yeah, I got it.
Bring it up because I'm. There it is.
Woo!
How's that possible?
How? Yeah, come on. All right.
This isn't evidence that shows you that they're hiding our true history and how the U.S. plays a role in Egyptian history and as well as biblical history.
Yeah.
Then I don't know what to tell you, because this clearly shows that
that's it.
America have a lot of ancient history that we need to know about.
Yeah, that's exactly. And then also too, I don't know if it comes up next or so, Lori, but anyhow, I sent you the paper that shows Manly P. Hall, the Freemasons' favorite character. They never talk about talking about the ancient Egyptians in America and the whole purpose of the Freemasonry.
Which one's Manly P. Hall one?
It'll have his large quote at the top. It might have a little picture of him or somebody else, but it'll say Manly P. Hall said this.
Oh boy, I don't see.
Like I said, ain't nobody else got this PDF.
Hold on a minute. All right, let me go in order. I might find it. Let's see. I downloaded all the ones you gave me. Let's see. Not that one. That one?
It's close to that. There's a picture of some guy. It may be Manly P. Hall, but it says, according to Manly P. Hall, he starts explaining.
All right. Well, how about if we just
keep going. Yeah,
we'll keep going, and I'll run into it because I downloaded all the ones you gave me.
Well, okay, that proves that all the temples match up to the Osiris constellation. So how does that happen?
Right, and this says the other thing that happened when the Grand Canyon became a national park was that the federal government immediately established a no-go zone around the aforementioned Egyptian-named landmarks in the area where both Powell's and Kincaid's caves were located. Further, they also established in later years a no-fly zone over the areas. And even today, you can't even fly a drone in these areas. No hiking, no boating, no camping, nothing. If there is nothing to the rumors of an Egyptian presence in the Grand Canyon, why the secrecy? Because if they were to admit that the mainstream version of history was wrong, i.e. that Christopher Columbus didn't discover America and that the ancient peoples traveled the world, then they might also have to admit where the Egyptians actually got their knowledge, as well as confirming that Genesis 6 biblical narrative is actually true. They couldn't have that, of course, so they developed the Powell Doctrine.
Yep.
And let's go up to next one.
It's still kind of crazy to me how some people will say Christopher Columbus discovered America. How do you discover a place where people are already there?
You know? Discover.
Even when I was a kid and they taught me that, I was like, I'm pretty sure I know what discover means. That's not.
Right.
It's not what discover means. Like I can just discover someone's house, basically. Like, oh, this is a nice house. I discovered it. Now it's mine.
Yeah. Well, hero. Like, remember when Ernie found that book about Columbus? Columbus was just saying the wrong things, and they were like, "Shut up." He's like, "Oh, they got dog-headed people. They got Egyptians. They got African Americans over here. They got everybody over here."
Yeah.
And they were like, they're like racist. Send them back.
Right. That's pretty funny. I thought maybe this was it, but it's not. But this one, it talks about, come on, Lori, pull it up. The Smithsonian, and they call it Lying Gatekeepers, established in 1846 with an endowment by a philanthropist, chemist, and mineralogist, James Smithson. The Institute was purported to be an establishment for the increase and diffusion of knowledge among men. As you will see, the truth is that the Smithsonian Institute is engaged in exactly the opposite effort. As a little background, the legend of John Wesley Powell speaks of him as a paramount figure in American geology, a remarkable scientist, an avid explorer, and a passionate environmentalist when he went to work for the Smithsonian Institute in 1879 as the director of anthology. He was considered expert because his ethnographic work with Native American tribes were where his stated goal was civilizing them. I love when they do that. Also known for his map-making prowess, he was appointed by then President Garfield as the second director of the USGS while still serving at the Smithsonian, and was a founding member of the National Geographic Society. He also started the Cosmos Club. The Cosmos Club, which still exists today, is a very powerful and private social club in Washington, D.C., which attracts academics and power players throughout the nation's capital. To illustrate this, over the years, the ranks of their membership have included 3 U.S. presidents, 2 U.S. vice presidents, a dozen Supreme Court justices, 36 Nobel Prize winners, 61 Pulitzer Prize winners, and 55 recipients of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. It is the seat of intellectual power in the country. In order to belong to the Cosmos Club, you have to think a certain way, a humanistic way. Because of this, it is the front door for every thought or effort that has set itself up against the truth of God. Interestingly, our deep black sources also say that there is a secret tunnel system underneath the club which gives members and the elite access out of the prying eyes of the public. By the way, the sources also report that the underground tunnel system goes to the bowels of the Smithsonian storage facilities in order to give secret access to those places as well. One of the most famous living geologists in the world is a member of the Cosmos Club. He told Steve Quayle directly, quote, "I know all about the Egyptian stuff from the Grand Canyon that's kept in the Smithsonian," end quote. What you will find is this information is more widespread than you think. When John Wesley Powell first rode down the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon in 1869, the Manifest Destiny ideal was in full swing. Coined in 1847, the term first appeared in an editorial for the Democratic Review. At that time, it was a radical belief that said the United States was destined by God to expand the Union all the way west of the Pacific Ocean. Yeah.
It's quite interesting how they hid stuff from us and how intricate they are in doing so. And these people come up with these amazing discoveries, and yet they were able to just completely put it under wraps. And how far you have to dig to be able to uncover all this stuff.
But something so vast as the Grand Canyon. I mean, they are able to they're able to hide things because, I mean, it's first off, it's a harsh environment. It takes a special skill to not only navigate the river, but also the rock formations. It's dangerous down there. So, I mean, they have that ability to close these places off, and some of them will probably never be seen by anybody other than a government official.
Have you known of anybody that tried to go exploring in the Grand Canyon like that in recent memory?
Yes. And they were flown over, a helicopter flew over them and told them to get out.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Can you read the next one? If you get it off your Facebook, I sent it to you.
Which one? You sent me so much.
I know. Hold on a second. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Give me just a second. 2 seconds.
All right.
It's already been saved. Gotta find you. There you are. All right, here's the next one. There you go.
The first one or second one?
It's the same one I sent you. I sent
Okay.
them
All right. It says along the way, it was believed that this choosing by the Almighty would enable America to spread capitalism, democracy, and our dominion over the entire North American continent. Consequently, significant expansion episodes like the 1803 Louisiana Purchase, the Lewis and Clark expeditions westward, the annexation of Florida in 1819, the admitting of Texas to the Union in 1845, and the establishment of the Oregon Territory in 1842 fueled the mindset that the United States was destined to rule. However, this thinking that nothing could or should interfere with our westward expansion was also largely responsible for the forced displacement and killing of hundreds of thousands of Native Americans along the way. After all, young America was foreordained, so therefore these savages were expendable. John Wesley Powell was a devout follower of the beliefs of Lewis Henry Morgan, an American anthropologist who is the only American social theorist to be cited by Karl Marx, Charles Darwin, and Sigmund Freud. They say that people are known by the company they keep. If Morgan was speaking Marx's, Darwin's, and Freud's language, you pretty much know how he thought. And if Powell considered him someone to aspire to, well, that tells you a lot about Powell as well. And because of Powell's proclivity for socialistic and Darwinistic thinking, manifest destiny was extremely prevalent in a paper submitted by Powell on behalf of the Smithsonian, which became known as the Powell Doctrine in July of 1880. In it, Hero Powell blatantly decrees that no anthropological research should consider any talk to the lost tribes from that point in history forward. He also stated in the writing that Native Americans were uncultured, savage, and that they lacked higher intellect. Isolationist in nature, the piece stated, hence, it will be seen that it is illegitimate to use any pictographic matter of date anterior to prior to the discovery of the continent by Columbus for historic purposes. And he also prohibited any analysis which would connect artifacts located in the New World to any people or so-called races of antiquity in other parts of the world. These words are even more shocking when you consider that Powell himself discovered in the Grand Canyon. To objective observer, it is obvious that flat-out refusal to analyze and scrutinize such evidence is not only unscientific, but it's also extreme and clearly shows an alternative agenda to their stated goal of increasing and diffusing knowledge. Yet, from the day that the Powell Doctrine was published to this, it has been in the implicit or explicit policy of the Institute. As a consequence, the day that the Smithsonian published the Powell Doctrine was a death knell for the world's true history narrative. So that pretty much goes to show you that they deliberately don't want us to know because they believe they're superior to what we know. And because their knowledge is superior, that we don't need to know anything else besides what they want to give us.
Well, when it would also completely obliviate not only biblical facts, or I'm sorry, it would validate the Bible and the biblical facts, and it would completely obliterate the historical documents or the historical textbooks that we've learned throughout the years.
Right. And there's been a movement going on in which people of my skin color is actually not from the African region, but from here in the United States, that the majority of us are native to this land. And I believe Hero talked about that with me as well. Hero, have you weren't you the one who discussed that with me?
I think we talked about that a little bit. You were talking about you found like a book from the Library of Congress or something like that.
Yes, I believe I showed it to the three of you. There is a book in the Library um, Congress that it shows the true history of America, and it goes back to people of my skin tone being native to this land, as well as documented accounts of people from this land knowing Jesus, seeing him, witnessing him walk on this earth, knowing where Noah's Ark is, completely showing that the materials used to build Noah's Ark is native to this land, which is gopher wood, which is known for the state of Florida, as well as some other interesting artifacts that depict the Israelites traveling to the Holy Land, the links to the Mississippi River, whole bunch of evidence, as well as Central America as well, showing how everything is coinciding with one another. And I firmly believe that this type of evidence is stored in both the Vatican and the Smithsonian in their hidden rooms, which, Lori, you have shown me some articles about that and how I discussed some of those things as well.
Yeah, we'll pull them up in a moment, because it does. I think tonight's going to be a part 2. And I'll explain how I'm giving this a part 2, because I played the video that we played at the opening of the show. I played yesterday on the channel, and I labeled that part 1. This will be part 2, and I think next week we're going to do, because I don't think we're going to get to the Vatican. There's too much to go over in the Smithsonian, so I think next week we'll do part 3 with the Vatican. But so John just sent me the paper, and this says, listen, this is crazy. Offering proof of this hypothesis, Canadian author, lecturer, astrologer, mystic, and Freemason Manly P. Hall spoke on the subject often. While we certainly wouldn't agree with many of his beliefs, he did have some unique knowledge about about ancient Egypt. In one of his old talks, he said the following. Way back in the days of the glory of Baghdad, the great Sultan, the follower and descendant of the great al-Rashid of Arabian Nights, the Sultan al-Rashid al-Mamnun decided to open the Great Pyramid. He had been told that it had been built by giants who were called the Shaddai, superhuman beings, and that within the pyramids and those pyramids, they had stored a great treasure beyond the knowledge of man. So, taking this court with him, the Sultan went to Egypt, and he stood and looked at the Great Pyramid. At the time, all the casting stones were in place. Those are the outer. We only see the innards of the temple, or the pyramids today. It had a smooth glaze over it, and it had a gold tip at the top. So he actually saw it in its original state. 4 walls were perfectly smooth. There was no visible opening of any kind. He didn't know exactly what to do, but he heard from legends there was supposedly an entranceway, where the supposed entranceway was, and he began to dig there. And they had a very fine way of digging in those days, which I think we have improved on. They had to use cold coal fills, and vinegar to go through the stone. And when they go through a certain way, they did find that they had come very close to an entrance, but a great stone blocked it, and they couldn't go further. So Manly P. Hall actually admits to all of this, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. And any Freemason on TikTok, they will never talk about him. They always go with Albert Pike and try to debunk everybody. But as soon as you bring up Manly P. Hall, they'll be like, oh, they'll block you, because Manly P. Hall proves that Freemasonry is from Egypt. He just said it. The knowledge of power doesn't come from Solomon's temple. It comes from the Great Pyramid. And the Giants.
And they try to, the Freemasons try to tell us that their knowledge goes back to the Solomon's Temple.
Yeah, and the Great Pyramid. Yeah, they try to tell you that, but they don't want to tell you nothing about no pyramid because what did Manly P. Hall say? Oh, the Giants built that.
The Giants built it. Yeah.
So
Wow.
the Masons don't want to have anything because as soon as you say, they're like, there is no Egyptian connection to any Freemason thing. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, okay. So all the Iroquois Indians during the French and Indian War, so that why were they wearing these Egyptian relic jewelry that actually matched the Freemasonry of Wisep and all? You know what I mean? Like, how'd they get that stuff?
Right.
Because where were the Iroquois from? Oh, Tennessee, all the East Coast, all the pyramid. You know what I mean? It's like, come on now. But they don't know that. They'll never say nothing about that. You prove them wrong, and they'll be like, "Oh no, I'm a Shriner. I ride around a clown car, and it just
and I
You can't talk about Columbia. You can't talk about the Luxor.
They're annoying.
Oh, I was saying you can't talk about the Luxor. You can't talk about the Apotheosis. You can't talk about Mystery Babylon or anything about the other types of stuff that they know about.
Yeah, that's Freemasonry. It all comes from Egypt.
Yep.
Right. But they want us to believe that it comes from Solomon's Temple, but Manly P. Hall says otherwise. And
well, here's the thing. We know that Solomon was eventually became a wicked man too.
Right. Exactly.
So they're admitting that they're getting their origins from wicked sources.
Right. Exactly. They've got because Solomon was the one that started up the what is it called, the mystery schools. The holder of the keys of the mystery schools, whatever. And everybody, when you sit there and you go, oh no, she's talking about Harry Potter. Let me tell you something. A few years back, I started to do some research, and I learned that there is actually mystery schools. There is actually schools like the X-Men, the schools that hold kids with special gifts. And there is one on each continent that's a secret. You don't know where it is. They come to you. You don't go to them. They will come to you if they observe your child. They believe your child has special gifts, and they will come to you, and your child will be taken to the school and they'll be taught. It's factual. It's true. I was very surprised. I couldn't get too far into the secret ones, but the ones that aren't so secret, there's quite a few on each continent, but one on each continent is a secret. And you have to, it's by invitation only.
Do you remember the name of it or no?
Oh God, I'll have to get out my notebook on that. I'm trying to remember when I did it. I think I did it.
You best believe I'm gonna want to look into that X-Men type of stuff.
Yeah, it was very interesting. So I mean, when you talk about the secret schools and the secret the way they teach. They take homeschooling to a whole different level.
Yeah.
So we've got Manly P. Hall talking about of the Giants. We've got the Smithsonian Institute talking about the Giants. I've mentioned many times on here about the TV show that was on, I believe, the History Channel, where that guy was digging up the Giants. He was looking for them. He was mainly concentrating on the mounds in Ohio. And they shut down the show because he actually found giant bones. And who took them? But the Smithsonian Institute took them. But we also have another historical figure who actually talks about giants as well. John, want to talk about Abraham Lincoln?
Yeah, and see, here's the thing too. Abraham Lincoln, and I know, Fritz knows this, that Lincoln was the highest-ranking Rosicrucian in the Western Hemisphere.
Oh, wow.
So, and Abraham Lincoln does the Order of the Lily, and he they come from that giant knowledge. So for him to say this right here, I mean, it's exactly what he meant. It wasn't, oh yeah, I've heard the stories. He said exactly that. The eyes of that species of extinct giant whose bones fill the mounds. He knew what they were. It wasn't no. I mean, he's a Rosicrucian. That's the whole thing. They focus more on the bloodlines of Mary Magdalene, but they know that Joshua fought these things.
Exactly. He stood in Niagara Falls and he gave a speech, and this is exactly what he said. And he said what he meant, and he meant what he said. He talked about the giants and the bones and the mounds of America. He knew exactly what he was talking about. He knew exactly that the giants that he was talking about gazed their eyes upon Niagara Falls, the same one that he was speaking of, and the same one that you can go visit today.
I mean, if you go with the fact that the Incans called this place Amarahuka, which was Amarahu was the serpent god in their culture, Quetzalcoatl, basically, all the same thing. The plume serpent, right? And the giants are the offspring of the plume serpents. The Watchers are described by, whether Sintchen was full of, crap or not, he still described the Anunnaki as vipers. Enoch described the Watchers as vipers, all feathered serpents. And they know that the giants are the offspring of feathered serpents. So, Lincoln, all the high-ranking elites knew that stuff.
Here's something else that was taken by the Smithsonian, that pterodactyl that was during the Civil War that was taken. And I found this, and I'm going to show you. I found some quite interesting things. First up, I'm going to show you guys. Unfortunately, for some reason, my computer's not pulling up the video, but check this out. Is there a secret portal to another world hidden in the Grand Canyon? All of the research points, yes, there is. And supposedly it leads to Egypt, right?
They no telling.
I've seen and read certain things about a passageway that leads America to Africa.
To Africa,
and
yeah.
vice versa.
Yeah. I've seen.
So, wouldn't be surprised.
Exactly. And of course, I mean, if there is a portal there, it makes sense, because I mean, there's many portals here just in the United States. You've got Sedona's a portal. The St. Louis Arch is a portal. The dam, Hoover Dam's a portal. There's portals all over the United States if the truth came out. So yeah, it would make sense that there's one there.
Well, you can do a whole show on the Hoover Dam.
And it would make sense that it would go between here and Africa, between here and Egypt, because, well, Egypt is Africa or Egypt is in Africa. How else would those artifacts get here?
It had to be some type of way.
Well,
the only thing I can think of is Egypt was already established here when the continent of Pangaea was separated after the Tower of Babel.
Yeah, the Citadel and the Grand Canyon, in my opinion, was already set up when it was Pangaea, and the assimilated culture that made up of Alexander Helios and then all the people that were in Egypt at the time, they literally came over here to go to it, not even to find it. They already knew where it was at.
Wow.
Because some people can say that their Grand Canyon, yeah, they could say all the Colorado River ran through it and formed it, but a lot of like the Grand Canyon matches what was on Mars because of a cataclysm. Being torn apart, torn open per se, because there's also a Grand Canyon in the region of Cydonia on Mars. Wow. And Laura, you know what else? All the little mounds on Mars that the Viking probe took pictures of. Remember we did a show about that?
Yeah.
That also matches up to the constellation of Osiris. It's the same little mapping Arizona is. So how's that possible?
Yeah, there's absolutely. I mean, we don't believe in coincidences. Never will. Never have been.
Yeah. So I mean, Mars is all over this, and it comes from Rahab. So to answer what Hero asked me earlier, Hero, the Egyptian culture came from Rahab.
The planet?
The planet Rahab.
Which is now our asteroid belt.
That's where it all started at. It started right there in Rahab, Lucifer's throne. They were the Anunnaki, were Lucifer and the fallen, and they just started there. That's the Egyptians, because all the artifacts being dug up. We got to get that alien carvers guy on. I feel bad for him because I wouldn't want to be caught with none of that crap. But that's why I don't even bother with that stuff. But they have, all the same little entities on these actual Stargate, these control boxes and these glyphs. And I sent Lori the glyphs. I don't know, Lori, you still have the glyphs I sent you?
I would
like
have
the alphabet, the Nephilim stone, basically.
I don't remember you sending.
I probably didn't, because I didn't want you to have it. Not for any personal reasons. I just didn't want you to. You know what I mean? That shit causes trouble.
No. I get it. No, I don't ever remember you sending me that. No.
But
I can't. I can pull up. Keep talking. I have an idea. I'm pulling up something.
And it's called the Nephilim stone. Well, that's the thing, because the glyphs, there's an actual library that's being collected, and the Smithsonian knows these things too. And and certain people do have that on the civilian side, and the Smithsonian and different agencies are just trying to get their hands on that crap of what they're digging up. That's why I talk about the alien carvings guy, like that's dangerous stuff to have possession of. But these things tell the story. These artifacts have the glyphs on there that can be translated, and it literally it tells the story about these biolabs. This shit is dangerous. It's real. That's the whole thing about it. People wouldn't think in a zillion damn years that Rahab was just one big biomedical facility of DNA manipulation, and it just kept getting spread across different places. Mars had it, Earth had it, still has it. But it started on Rahab, and these artifacts, some of them, that they probably don't show you because they don't want you to know that they have the glyphs on there, tell the story of these damn things. And it's literal Nephilim. It's them. You know what I mean? It's like what you hear stories about. It's those assholes are on there starting trouble.
Pull up these. These are.
I think about Lori. Growing up, having to go to Catholic church, and I mean that drove me away. But having a belief now in the Lord, and it's like, can you imagine? Like, I used to sit in church and be like, "Oh, this is boring." Like, but if you told me, "Okay, look, everybody, these damn fallen angels, been manipulating shit and doing this and that," I'd have been like, "Oh, okay, that's what's going on."
Right.
Jesus came to, but guess what? That drives you directly into the belief of the Lord that he's here to reverse what they did on Mount Hermon, basically.
Exactly. Oh, that one's got it. It's transparent. This is, and here goes my computer again. Give me a second. Here's some hieroglyphs, both from Egypt and from the Grand Canyon. Hieroglyphs are all over the Southwest, like literally all over. And they're not just from the American Indians. They're not from the Native Americans that are from there. They're actually Egyptian hieroglyphs. Because I know a lot of people were saying, oh no, those are Indian. Those are Indian drawings. They don't mean anything. That they don't have any significance when it comes to Egypt, but they do.
Yeah, I mean. So when the Anasazi were experiencing, the giants coming through the portal, that was a communication effort too, were hieroglyphs from Egypt. And I mean, if think about how similar are the languages, like the Zuni Indian tribe, a lot of their words match the Japanese language.
Right.
Because of the Orient. I mean, it just all that stuff is just, I mean, to think that a bunch of elongated skull with beings with wings and snake tails have just been busy in their chemistry lab.
Right. Oh my God.
It just that just really, I don't know, that just amazes me that, and I'm not knocking preachers nowadays. You know what? I get the story of the good news, but I go through radio stations. I'll hear preachers talking. It's like, man, that's you wasting time. I mean, yeah, preach the epistles and the gospel, and I'm all for that. But a lot of these people just keep like this prosperity and this and that. And I'm thinking, wait till these damn things come back. And people are like, what the F is that thing?
Come back. They're already here.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm talking about it more like people being engaged by them, like actual, engagements, I'm just like this. It just amazes me. And I laugh. I'm like, I can't even listen to people anymore. I can't listen to these preachers talking about prosperity, got me 2 jets and got me in a big house. It's like, man, my gosh, you don't even know what's about to happen to you.
Yeah,
No,
I feel the same thing. Like every time, like my parents try to get me to go to church sometimes, and it's like they don't talk about anything that's happening. Like we're literally living in Revelations, but you still want to talk about like Moses.
Yeah,
Know
that's
what I
the
mean?
thing. Yeah, they want. Yeah, well, they don't want to lose their. They can't afford. Literally, pun intended. They can't afford to lose the congregation. But they won't.
Yeah.
They'll try to keep you. The feel good. And like I said, look, man, some people don't. Not everybody needs an Nephilim. Okay, I know that, but it's just like I can't do it. I can't sit there and listen to somebody tell me, this and that, and go out there and do this. I'm like, no, that don't matter because you're part of a system. This is all Freemason occult system. The money and everything is just like it's all fake, every bit of it.
Right. But it's like they don't have to talk about the Nephilim and all that type of stuff, but at least talk about like the RFID chip potentially being the mark of the beast. Like, you know what I mean? Like this is like this is the time that we've all been waiting for, basically. We always people in the congregation and the churches and always used to say stuff like, we're living in the last days, we're living in the end times. Now we're actually here and no one's saying it anymore.
Right.
It's almost like they were just saying it to say it, but now that they see it, it's like they want to act like it's not happening.
It seems like the time where people stop talking about it is the time that we're supposed to be talking about it. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
so we're already here, and the majority of the churches don't. Like, you won't hear a church talk about stuff that we're discussing here tonight.
Well,
and the Bible talks about how anything in secret will come to light, and this stuff has already been brought to light, but nobody is willing to look. And that's the problem with the times that we're living in right now. We have tools at our disposal, and the Bible talks about knowledge will increase. But where does it increase? It only increases in those who are willing to look.
Yeah.
Well,
I can remember my religion teacher, because again, I was the Catholic schoolgirl, and we would every year we would do the same Bible study, and just every chance, and see, we get to Genesis 6, you can look at him just give me that side eye, like, don't ask. It was either don't, and I could never figure it out. It was either don't ask because I'm not supposed to tell you, or don't ask because I don't know.
And the answer could be both.
Well, here's the thing too. This is what I think about. I thought about this years ago. I was such adamant on Paul, and we've already done a show about Paul, and I've done some TikToks about Paul, why they go after him. So Paul says what Ernie said, the whole explosion of knowledge, right? You're going to see these things. You're going to know it. Paul reiterated, there's only Gentiles and Jews, but everybody's going to know what I'm talking about. Now, but think about this. Paul was correct with everybody will find it. Hero just said it. Everybody's starting to see it, but then they don't bat an eye to it. But are they just being what Daniel said? Daniel said there'll be a Babylonian blindness. You know what I mean? So it's two literal prophets meeting at once now. Paul said you'll know it and you won't want to recognize it. But actually he didn't. He said you'll know it. But then Daniel says you won't recognize it. So it's at that point. It's literally two different books matching up right now.
Interesting. Let's
yeah, but
go ahead.
it just I just can't grasp the understanding of what else are they hiding from us. I just like can't wait to find out. You know, it used to make me angry that they can hide such important information from us. But as I sit back and look at things, I can grasp the notion that they don't want us to know about this because they really don't want us to know about the one true living God.
I think it
God's
has so much to do with America. I think it has so much to do with America. Literally, nope.
Yes.
If you go anywhere else, they got paintings of UFOs. They got all this stuff, and these people know these things. Everywhere you go, they know it. It's like the old joke. How come UFOs are only seen in America?
Yeah.
Everybody else
they
always
on Earth
say,
knows these things.
Yeah, they're like, oh, the UFOs are only seen in America. No, they're not. That's not true. That's propaganda. They have, there's paintings in Costa Rica of conquistadors arriving, and there's damn flying saucer in the air. You know what I mean? It's just like it's everybody knows about this stuff. It's just like it's just their life. It's their way of life. They've always heard it. They've seen it. Whatever. And but I think literally Daniel he talked about Mystery Babylon. The Antichrist to me isn't going to show up and do all this stuff in Israel. I don't think Israel's got nothing to damn do with it. I think he's going to come over here. He's going to do the apotheosis here. It's like this land, the atmosphere over Mystery Babylon is where it's taking place, because who cares if a bunch of Europeans don't recognize the enemy? You know what I mean? It's like it doesn't matter. They're already in turmoil. That place has been destroyed 3 times in its existence with wars. Majorly, and the plague, and it's just all these places have such turmoil. But Amarahuka has never had this. But I'm telling you, everything is matching to this land. For some reason, everything is focused on this land to come after us. We're all Daniel.
Well, it's always said that we were the last bastion. We're the last bastion of hope for the ending of the destruction of the New World Order. And people are like, the only thing standing between the destruction is the United States. And I do believe that. I do believe it.
And it's like, is it because the people? Is because the Roman Empire got split up? Where do they show up at? In America. How's Washington, D.C. built? All built occultly. We discussed that. But it's like the Chaldeans, the Babylonians, all those buttholes came over here.
Yeah. And if you look at the creation of America, if you look, Sir Francis Bacon, everybody's like, wait, no, United States, we were built on Christian values. No, we weren't. We were our founding fathers weren't even Christian.
Exactly.
You know what? That reminds me of the trend that's going on TikTok about how many times have you heard you thought about the Roman Empire? Why do you think that is now trending?
Yeah, because we're the Roman Empire.
Yep.
It's Chaldeans. Who the Babylonians turned into? The Romans. Yep. They're over here. Statue of Liberty is Osiris and Ishtar together, transgender statue. It's just.
The United States was not built on Christianity. It was built on deism.
Easily.
100%.
This country has been built solely for the establishment of the one world government and the rise of the Antichrist.
Yeah, apotheosis, 100%. That's exactly what it is. That's why it's always denied.
And that is one of the main reasons why everything has been hidden from us. That's why the things that have been discovered has been immediately taken and hidden in the secret rooms and catacombs and
Of the Smithsonian.
underground.
Okay, so if the Smithsonian literally has everything, it has one of everything that has ever lived. And that guy said that there's over 300,000 things underneath the Smithsonian. Why would they have all these living things? Anything that has ever existed on this planet is in the Smithsonian. Why would that be there, connected to the rotunda and these tunnels? You know what I mean? The literal sons of Horus, the chimeric children of Horus, each one with a different animal head. I mean, that's real. That's real stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're
going to see this one day. We're going to see this very soon.
Absolutely. Up on the screen, I found some of the. I'm having problems again with my internet, aren't I? Am I breaking up?
No, you sound fine.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. So the funding of the Smithsonian is just as sus as the rest of it. Let me. My computer, guys, hold on a second. Give me 2 seconds here. All right. So the Smithsonian Institute. Check this out. Founding don't they mean like the founding, like back when it was founded. But I think once you give a certain amount of money, you're considered a founding donor. And that would be 20 million and above. Lilly Endowment, Robert Frederick Smith, the Oprah Winfrey Charitable Foundation. If you give them 10 million and above, you're considered a capstone. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, Bank of America, Boeing, Ford Foundation, and then you got the little guys, the Prudential, Toyota, Walt Disney Company, Walton Family, the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation. And then if you give $1 million, then you're the Aetna, Aflac, Apple, BlackRock, Bloomberg,
LeBron James, AT&T,
Kobe, Vanessa Bryant, yeah, Kobe, yeah, Microsoft Corporation, Morgan Stanley.
And notice the low-level fraternities are in there as well. Now, if you're looking at a college fraternity, those are entry level into the Freemasonic world. So a lot of people who join fraternities in college goes off to be Freemasons.
Yeah. It's a fraternity. They have between $500,000 and what's interesting is these names, not so much down here, but these names up here. The Rockefeller Foundation, the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation. These are the same foundations that fund our PBS. Do you know that? Did you notice that? Never anybody watch PBS anymore?
Not since Reading Rainbow.
Reading Rainbow. I love him. No, but if you watch their shows and you watch during their actually I think it's all the time now. They'll say to you, this show has been brought to you by the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation. I just find it weird that people have their hooks in educational programming. I don't know. Nonsense romper room. God. All right. I just found that interesting.
It's very interesting. And we got a lot of notable people. in there. I mean, you're looking at the top of the food chain when it comes to notoriety that's donating the most. And how did they come up with the money to be able to donate that stuff, huh?
Here's the thing: is why
I'm getting reports
we
your
don't
audio is
monetize our
breaking up,
channel.
Lori.
Okay. Let me close down. I think I only got one up. How am I now? How am I
Sounding
now?
good right now.
Am I sounding good?
Yep.
Hold on. I'm buffering. All right, I'm buffering. Yeah, I'm really having, I don't know why I'm having internet issues. That's the new modem. What was I going to say? I don't know what I was going to say. But anyways, I found one more interesting thing, and this is going to be giving going up to our close. So I did a little bit of research today, and I was like for some, I was putting in different word phrases, trying different combinations and seeing what I could bring up. And this came up, and this is from the FOIA from the CIA.gov, and it talks about the Smithsonian Institute. Now, I'm not going to read this whole thing to you. About a biological warfare. It says the Pacific Ocean Project was two separate missions existing side by side, the Smithsonian's and the Pentagon's. The Smithsonian was only too eager to be given funds to study bird migratory patterns, and the military was eager to find safe sites for atmospheric testing of biological weapons in the Pacific. And it has a little PDF, and I clicked on it. And it talks about this was from the Washington Post, 12 May 1985. First study went straight to biological warfare experts at Fort Detrick. John, what's Fort Detrick?
That's I don't know if it's still open, but that was a military base with all the bioweapons, basically testing and development and all that stuff.
Well, it talks about 20 years ago, a team of Smithsonian researchers landed on a string of remote Pacific islands to study gulfs, but there was another reason they were there, one stamped secret. The leaders of this scholarly band of curators and ecologists reported their findings to military scientists whose interest was not birds but biological weapons. So the Smithsonian is not just a do good for the people to keep the for the restoration of history, is it?
No, it has a whole. It's not what's on top of the ground; it's what's underneath.
Crazy. Yes, there are 4 links. And I'm not going to read all of this because, well, I'm having problems with my internet, but I will put the link for you guys to take a look and to find this and take a look at, because it floors me to think that they would be using public money, because not only is the Smithsonian Institute funded by those big names that we just said, but it's also receives public funding from our tax dollars. To fund these secret programs. Shouldn't whatever they find be available to the public? It's our history. Why is it being held from us?
because we allow for them to have the power to hold stuff from us. That's the point. We give them a power. The system of checks and balances was established. If we want to look at it like on paper for face value, the founding fathers created a system of checks and balances to prevent certain organizations in the government from gaining too much power. But yet over the years, society has given up those rights to be able to demand such things to the government so they can gain more power and more authority over all things, whether it's industrial, health, pretty much all aspects of our lives, including our history. So that's why they have the power to be able to do what they do right now. And until the general public decides enough is enough, they're going to keep doing that and keep gaining more and more power. But we know the Bible talks about the whole world is going to come together with one central authority ruling over all. So we're going to give up that power even more regardless. So looks like Lori is still having some internet issues. He just fell off. Since we have reached the hour and 45-minute mark, we can go ahead and close with some final thoughts. John, would you like to go first?
Yeah, definitely. I guess the whole aspect of, from what I can tell, or my opinion is that something is up with this land, and I get that it is America, what we've known, and we're all born into the system, and it may have been either good for us or bad for us or whatever happened in our life. But the real the underlining, the underneath the icing is a whole lot more, and I believe it's all sinister. And I think it attacks the very foundation of everyone's free will and salvation. And I just, I say continue to research and ask for discernment. And, the Lord will tell you if you even need to bother with it. That's between you and him. But I just say people need to look or need to tell others, hey, don't fall into the motions of this society. So when these things start appearing or coming across your TikTok or whatever, you'll be prepared for it. Just kind of like the same message I had, for last week or whatever week that was. So yeah, Smithsonian. I think I guess we'll talk about the Vatican next time, but Smithsonian is definitely going against you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How about you, Hero?
Yeah. The thing is, like, all of the globe, all attention has been on the United States for like a super long time. So this country plays a huge part in this whole entire this entire script, if you want to call it that. Like that's why I'm genuinely starting to think that basically everything that happened in the Bible mainly happened over here and like a couple other places, but I think almost everything happened here. And that's why everything is being hidden so aggressively, because they don't want people finding out anything that's happened over here. Everywhere else, they're like, oh, you can find out whatever you want. We don't really care. But over here, no. Don't even mention that the Tower of Babel was in Canada. Don't mention that. Don't mention
We won't
that
talk
the
about that at
Mississippi
all.
River actually fits the biblical description of the Euphrates River more than the actual quote unquote Euphrates River in Africa. Don't mention that. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely. And as I said earlier, the US is going to usher in, the 7-year tribulation. I mean, we're already starting to see signs of that right now. We're seeing Christian morals and values being dumped to the wayside for woke ideology and other demonic doctrine that has been spreading the nation pretty much ever since its inception, little by little. But now we're starting to see it on the increase. We're starting to see it manifest into life in ways that we have never seen before. We're seeing like demonic acts being praised and edified on the world stage from this country. We're having leaders in our federal government that are laughing stocks amongst the world. If we look at this and we just look at all of the other historical empires throughout history, and we can depict when and where those nations fell, and we're going to suffer the same fate. And unfortunately, this is going to be the last one, I firmly believe, just because of the influence that we do have on the world stage, and due to the fact that we have technology to back us up with that. And them hiding all of these things from us just further rectifies our belief that we are living in the end times. Because since we are so influential, if we have that knowledge, we might do something about it to alter their plans to take over the world. And they're the villains, and they're the antagonists of this show, of this harsh reality that we're living in. Feel like we're living in a movie. Am I correct? And I listened to a sermon earlier today, and it was talking about the rise of the beast and the rise of the Antichrist, and how we as a society are just completely witnessing it, but yet denying it thereof. And that denial is going to lead many people astray, and it's going to bring forth darkness upon this world. And we must prepare, and we must have the knowledge and stuff that we need to succeed in this life, and be able to reach out to those souls who needs to be saved, those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. I mean, we talked about it the other night with Marcus Kaiser, that we're living in some times that the spirit of the Antichrist is increasing, and he's already here. We just don't know who he is yet, and he hasn't revealed himself to us. But I'm pretty sure in our lifetime we will see this happening, and we definitely need to understand the season that we're living in, and what to look out for, and stuff like this helps that case. And Big John, you said you wanted to discuss next week about the Vatican and their influence on our hidden history and stuff like that, correct?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I definitely think we should go ahead and do that as well. So with that said, I would like to thank all the moderators in our chat room for holding it down for us. I want to thank Lori for providing us with this avenue to be able to share our knowledge and be able to speak to all of you today. She does give her apologies, as she is suffering from some internet troubles here. And until the time we meet together next, I pray that you all stay blessed. Keep your armor up, study the word, build that foundation with the Most High God, because he's the only one that is going to lead you into the promised land. And with that said, I hope you guys have a good night. Remember, eyes open, no fear.